Don't you all think it's odd? Only the poor people in the West must care about climate change. Only the poor. The really, really wealthy, there's amazingly wealthy people in the world. Trillionaires own most of the world's property, control most of its assets, control Wall Street, control the London Stock Exchange, just control the currency manipulations, and they're infinitely rich. Yet, they must live on another planet separate to the rest of us, because only the rest of us must care about climate change. And these super rich people, well, it doesn't apply to them. They don't live on the same planet. The same as the Hollywood stars. They don't live on the same planet as the rest of us. Well, obviously, they don't live they live in another universe they've created within their own paradigm due to their massive amount of access to wealth they have, which means they can speak from up on high to all the rest of us. They now see as lowlifes to be sacrificed to whatever their cause is, Agenda 21 or whatever cause it is. Seems to be several conflicting causes going on at the moment. Iranian Islamists want to conquer the world. Sort of globalists backed by Soros want to conquer the world, and who knows what's going on inside America with all of that over there, the swamp in Washington, that also is combining with the globalists to conquer the world. Now, and control it. The thing is, it's very odd that only the less well off and the poor, that is, are sacrificed whilst in this campaign to stop climate change, whilst the extremely wealthy get more wealthy out of it. And that's just sort of ironic, really. Why, if we all in it together, are all equal now, and all humanity, they use the word we all the time, as if it's, and we is now a politically correct term, because it doesn't apply to pygmies in the middle of Africa, when, living there in the middle of jungle. They think, we and our sisters and brothers around the world, or Eskimos, or whatever it is. The idea of we, the term we, is, well, spurious to the best, because there's far too many individuals don't see the rest of us as part of them. Otherwise, they would be putting in trillions and trillions. They would put the money in other words, to change from reduce to coal, if you like. They would actually say, okay, this climate change is such an emergency that we are going to change from fossil fuels to some other system, which is nuclear power, is the only alternative to give the base load to run cities at this moment. So the only commercially available or market available alternative to coal, oil and whatever, gas, whatever, to charge up electric vehicles, run lifts, run solar systems, power trains and all the other things that are required for day-to-day living in all societies, not just Western societies. So it's very, very odd, isn't it, that they have this concern over climate change, but they haven't got a plan that says, okay, this is so important, this climate change, we all live in the same atmosphere. We're all going to suffer for it, are we? If we are concerned about something and we can afford to help and chip in about it, well, we do that. But there seems to be a fair proportion of people who are extracting trillions of dollars out of the poor people of society while shouting at them in a cacophony of noise about they're responsible, and somehow a prime minister or a president is responsible and they alone are responsible for climate change. That's how bizarre. These people, in other words, are not even hearing what they're saying. They're saying words that they're supposed to say, but they're not listening to the words that they say. They're not actually, it's not cognitive. They have got no response, emotional or intellectual response to the words they're issuing. Global climate change. Well, we all live in the same globe. Why aren't we all equally the same? And if it's more important to save the climate or stop climate change than it is for the individual to sort of do better for themselves, well, why aren't all the trillionaires and billionaires, and there's plenty of them around, sacrificing some of their wealth, only a small portion of it, to totally say, okay, here's a grant to Australia. Where's the grant? Okay, we're going to grant Australia $1 trillion. It's only money. We're going to grant them at 1% interest or something, $1 trillion, so you can go nuclear and have all our EVs within 10 years, and that'll stop your CO2 to some extent. That will stop it. That, if it was such a concern for the world, for Australia to act, that is the direction all these big noters, climate fanatics, deranged and delusional people ought to be suggesting, rather than just shouting at everyone and shouting at one man, the Scott Morrison, the Prime Minister, to do something that he has played no part on. How he deals with climate change when it's an impossible thing to deal with, is manifestly madness to suggest that he has any role in this at all. It's just a manifestation through media and propaganda and whatever it is, the Twitter sphere, to create this, well, it's just noise really. It's not, no sense in you've got to do something about climate change with all these people protesting, when if you ask them a very simple question, because it sums up Australia's in particular, but this can be relevant to any country. It depends on your percentage of population of the world's population. It all goes on that. You can ask Australia if you pour a bowl of water has a litre in it, right? And it leaks 1/4 of a litre per hour, but you put in an extra 1/2 litre per hour, right? How much water is in the bowl? Well, obviously, it gains 1/4 of a litre every hour, even though it's leaking. So even though Australia's pretending to reduce its CO2 emissions, if you add 5,000 people per week, which is 2,000 more cars per week on the road, or using fossil fuels, you're sort of adding more CO2 to it, regardless what you do. Australia's only 1/5 of a part per million of gross global CO2, which is a very simple thing to work out. But that's a digression. But nonetheless, it's obvious all those people in positions, journalism, whatever they are, university, whatever they are saying, oh, Australia, and Hollywood stars and all those other people in the English Parliament saying Australia must act on the climate change and do something. Obviously, they've never been to school. I mean, it's very simple. They've never done not 1 ounce and not 1 moment of what time have they put into any practical research into the meaning of things. So when they speak absolute rubbish, and they're not making any sense whatsoever from any perspective other than they're looking like fools and hypocrites right now, having the money available. It's only currency. They can make it. They just make currency to create debt. They create debt while making currency. There's no capitalism as such anymore, where people invent new things and they do in China and that. But no, capitalism used to be about inventing things. Now all they invent is derivatives, currency, and financial derivatives, what make people extremely wealthy with no effort other than being able to fiddle around on a computer. And that's what the world's basically financial system is based on, most of it. That's why it's sort of failing. The values aren't there. But because if you go along with that system and say, okay, we're stuck with that system, then they could easily create the finance and the cash flow, the currency flow, to some places like Australia. So you can go, okay, within 10 years, we're all going to be driving EVs and run by a nuclear plant, because you cannot run any country and charge all millions of EVs up, electrical vehicles up, with solar and wind and batteries, because you cannot ever create enough redundancy, enough backup to assure you've got the power to run things through these they're called currency loss systems, because they lose energy to a system which is denoted in debt. Now, these are very simple things to add up and work out for yourself. Anyone can do that. Anyone at all with a pen and paper can sit down for 5 minutes, been in school past year, 12 or whatever it is, and work those things out for themselves. So nothing's being made up here. from what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if the really wealthy are really, really concerned about Australia's emissions, then they would they would donate. They would say, here's some money, help the people out, or help the poor people out. Otherwise, why use the word we? It's pure, utter, unadulterated meanness, selfishness, and greed what is driving this madness called Stop Climate Change. It's now become an obvious sign that this planet is actually gone insane because of PC. I rest my case.